My name is Camille Norton, and I'm 38 years old. If you told me 10 years ago that I'd one day find myself hiding legal papers in the linen closet to keep my marriage from falling apart again, I would have laughed in disbelief. Or cried. Probably both. But let me start from the beginning. Before the lies, before the heartbreak, before I realized my husband could look me in the eyes and still keep a second life tucked behind them. Derek and I met in college, two broke kids at a coffee shop in Milwaukee, trying to survive finals and cheap rent. He had a crooked smile and smelled like cedarwood and old books. I used to think that smell meant safety. Now it makes my stomach turn. We got married young.
25.
Too young, probably. But we made it work. He started a small marketing firm, and I worked as an occupational therapist at a rehab center. We weren't rich, but we were stable. We had Isla 4 years later, our miracle baby after 2 miscarriages. The night I held her for the first time, Derek kissed my forehead and whispered, "This is our fresh start." I believed him. For a while, it was true. He'd make pancakes on Sundays. I'd read to Isla in the glider until she fell asleep against my shoulder. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what life is supposed to feel like. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Simple, soft, and steady. But things started shifting around year 7. Derek grew distant, working late, traveling more. He started wearing cologne again. That might sound stupid, but I noticed. He hadn't worn cologne in years. One night, I found a receipt from a jewelry store in his coat pocket, a necklace I never received. I sat in our bedroom closet for an hour, just staring at it. Eventually, I confronted him. He broke down, told me there'd been someone just once, he swore. A woman from a conference in Atlanta. It meant nothing, he said. It was a mistake. I was stupid. I didn't want to ruin our family. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to tell him to get out and never come back. But instead, I sat on the edge of our bed and cried quietly while he held my hand. Because part of me still wanted to believe him. We tried therapy. Weekly sessions, uncomfortable silences, raw truths. Some nights we'd come home and not speak. Other nights, we'd stay up until 2 a.m. talking like college kids again, drinking cheap wine in the kitchen. He promised he'd change. He even suggested we move. Said he wanted us to get away from bad energy. I rolled my eyes at the phrase, but deep down, I understood what he meant. So we sold our 2-bedroom condo in the city and bought a fixer-upper in the Indiana suburbs, a 1960s colonial with peeling paint, creaky floors, and potential. He called it our blank slate. That house on Hawthorne Street became our project. We picked up paint samples together, argued about flooring, and binge-watched renovation shows like we were experts. On weekends, we'd sand down cabinets while Isla built Lego castles on the porch. We laughed more. We cooked more. It felt like we were crawling our way back. Isla was 10 at the time, sharp as a tack, with her dad's eyes and my stubbornness. She knew something had gone wrong, though we never gave her the full picture. Kids always know. She'd draw pictures of us holding hands, leaving them on our pillows. "Just in case you forget," she said once. I didn't forget. I couldn't forget. But I convinced myself that maybe I could forgive. We spent the next year pouring ourselves into that house, physically and emotionally. Derek surprised me one day by remodeling the kitchen while I was away at a weekend conference. White shaker cabinets, brass fixtures, a subway tile backsplash. He even built a chalkboard wall for Isla with Mom's Kitchen written in big bubble letters. And I thought, maybe we're really doing this. Maybe this is the kind of love that survives storms. But even then, there were cracks. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at his phone and then quickly flipping it over. Or taking calls in the garage. I'd ask, "Everything okay?" And he'd say, "Just work stuff, Cam. It's nothing." I didn't want to become paranoid again. I hated who I was when I was paranoid. So I swallowed it. I told myself, this is what healing looks like. Messy. Imperfect. Uneven. But some nights, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me, trying to ignore the way my gut twisted when Derek stayed out too late or avoided eye contact when I brought up our finances. And still, I stayed. Because Isla needed stability. Because we had history. Because starting over alone at 38 felt terrifying. A few months ago, we finally finished the renovations. The last coat of paint went up in the guest room, and Derek stood beside me, paint roller in hand, grinning like a kid. "We did it," he said. "We really did." I smiled. But something inside me whispered, "Did we?" The truth was, I didn't feel peace. I felt fragile. Like we were balancing everything on a shelf that could break at any moment. And I didn't know how to admit that out loud. Then came that Tuesday. The envelope on the counter. The silence that followed. The unraveling that I never saw coming. But I'll tell you the rest soon. Because that day was just the beginning of how I learned that love without trust is just beautifully packaged fear. And sometimes, the people you rebuild with are the very ones who plan to tear you down all over again.
It was a Tuesday.
I remember because I had taken the afternoon off work to attend Isla's parent-teacher conference. She just won second place in the regional science fair, and I wanted to be there when her teacher raved about how bright and curious she was. The meeting went well. Her teacher said Isla had a gift for critical thinking, especially in problem-solving. I smiled the whole way home. Parenting had never been easy, but moments like that felt like small validations, proof that I was doing something right. When I walked into the house, everything looked normal. The dishwasher hummed quietly. Isla's sneakers were kicked off by the door. The sunlight poured in through the kitchen window, casting shadows over the marble countertops Derek had insisted on. And then I saw it, a plain white envelope resting on the kitchen counter, addressed to Derek Norton et al. I wasn't snooping. It was just sitting there, opened, like it had already been read. My name wasn't on the front, but my gut said open it. I wish I hadn't. The first line stopped me cold. Final notice of transfer of deed. Sale approved. Vacate within 30 days. I must have read it 5 times. My brain kept trying to unsee it, rewrite it, make sense of it. We hadn't sold the house. We weren't planning to sell the house. Why would we? I flipped through the attached pages with trembling hands. There were signatures, notaries, transfer agreements. One section showed a wire transfer with an obscene amount of money, sent to a bank account I didn't recognize. Not our joint account. Not mine. It was his. I checked the envelope again, thinking maybe it was some kind of mix-up. A mistake. A scam. But no. Our address was printed clearly at the top. This was real. My body went ice cold. I called Derek.
Once. Twice.
10 times. No answer. He was supposed to be at a client meeting across town. I texted him. What the hell is this? You sold the house? Call me. No reply. I walked around the kitchen in circles, unable to breathe. Every inch of that house had our fingerprints on it. I remembered Isla painting clouds on her bedroom ceiling. I remembered Derek and I sanding down the dining table by hand. I remembered the night we argued about pendant lights. He won, and I hated them. Now I looked up at them and wanted to rip them from the ceiling. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. $2,109.38. That's it. We'd had over $78,000 just a few months ago, leftover savings after renovations, and a loan we were smart enough to pay off early.
Gone.
I checked mine still intact. Then I tried to access his personal account. I couldn't.
Password had changed.
I wasn't on the deed directly. We'd purchased the house in Derek's name for a better mortgage rate due to his credit history. A mistake I now saw in brutal clarity. That night, he came home around 6:40. Isla was upstairs working on homework, and I was sitting at the kitchen table with the envelope and all the printed documents spread in front of me. He walked in whistling. Whistling. As if our world wasn't on fire. Hey, babe, he said, setting his keys on the hook. Something smells good. Did you cook? I stared at him. He froze when he saw the papers. You sold the house, I said, my voice shaking. He looked at me for a second too long, calculating. Then, Camille, I can explain. You better, I said, because I read every word of that contract. I saw the wire transfer. I saw the forged signature. My signature, Derek. And I don't see how you explain this without it ending in handcuffs. His eyes darted toward the stairs, as if checking to see if Isla was nearby. Then he dropped his voice and said, "It's complicated." God, I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I stayed still. Controlled.
Cold.
"You planned this," I whispered. "You've been planning this." He sat down across from me, rubbing his hands together like he was getting ready to pitch a business idea. "Listen, the market's high right now. We could triple our profit if we move fast. I was going to tell you, I was trying to line things up before it became messy. You weren't going to tell me. You were going to disappear." That hit him. I saw the mask slip for a moment. "Where's the money, Derek?" "It's tied up. Investments." "Bullshit. It went into an account under your name. What did you do, split it with someone?" He didn't answer. Which, of course, was an answer. I stood up. My hands were still shaking, but I felt something else rising in me. Something fierce and electric. Not fear. Not grief.
Rage.
"You think I won't fight this?" I asked. "You think I'll just roll over and let you steal our home, our savings, and Isla's future? You don't know me at all." He sighed and walked out of the room without another word. Later that night, I found him sleeping on the couch like he deserved rest. I looked at him and felt nothing. No love. No hate. Just a quiet clarity. This man will ruin us if I don't stop him. And that's when the fight began. But what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have guessed, was that help was coming. From a 12-year-old with an iPad and instincts sharper than most grown adults. The morning after I found out Derek sold our house behind my back, everything felt fake. The coffee tasted bitter, like metal. The sunlight felt too bright, as if the world had no idea it had just collapsed around me. And Derek? He acted like it was just another Thursday. He even offered to drop Isla off at school. I said no. He didn't push. Once he left, I sat at the kitchen table again and stared at the papers. My eyes burned from staying up all night. I had printed every email I could access, pulled my credit report, called a friend of a friend attorney to beg for advice. All I had were pieces of a puzzle, and Derek had stolen the box with the picture on it. Around 7:40, Isla came downstairs, still in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her iPad to her chest. Her eyes were puffy. She must have heard us arguing the night before. "Hey, honey," I said gently. "You want some breakfast?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked straight to the table and said something that stopped my breath. "I know what Dad's doing." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She sat down across from me, serious in that eerie, grown-up way kids get when they're scared but determined not to show it. "I've been watching him," she said, her voice low. "I didn't tell you because I thought maybe I was wrong, or maybe it wasn't my business. But last night, I heard everything. I felt like I couldn't breathe. He tells me he's taking me to piano practice every other Saturday," she continued. "But he never goes. I checked the GPS on his phone when he fell asleep last weekend. He's been going to the same house. A woman's house. Different state license plate on her driveway." I remembered the number. I sat there in silence, processing what I was hearing. My 12-year-old had been tracking her father behind my back. Not out of mischief, but out of fear. Out of suspicion. "I took pictures," she added. She opened her iPad and pulled up her camera roll. There were photos of Derek's phone screen. Texts from someone named Meredith, with hearts in the contact name. A location history with a street address I didn't recognize. One screenshot stood out. "Once the house sells, we'll finally be free. I'll fly out next month. Love you." Tears filled my eyes, but not for me. For her. For what this was doing to her. "You shouldn't have to carry this, Isla," I whispered. "I didn't want to keep it from you," she said. "I just didn't know when to tell you. But last night, I knew it was bad." She wasn't done. "He left his email open yesterday on the living room computer," she said. "I saw some weird messages, so I took screenshots." She handed me the iPad again and swiped to her notes folder. Attached were 4 full screenshots of an email thread between Derek and Meredith. The subject line? OFF Market Deal. Hawthorne Street. It was all there. They'd been planning the sale for months. Derek had forged my e-signature using a template from an old insurance document. Meredith coached him through hiding the money, even sent him an article on how to legally separate funds in divorce planning. They talked about transferring funds to a joint trust, their joint trust. My name was nowhere in the equation. In the last email, dated just 6 days ago, Meredith had written, "Just get the papers through escrow. Camille can't block it if she doesn't even know it's happening. Once it clears, I'll book the flights." I already told my boys. I don't remember how long I sat there. My hands were shaking so hard I had to steady them against the table. Isla reached out and held my arm. I looked at her, not as my little girl, but as this astonishing, brave human who had done more to protect me than the man I married. "Thank you," I said, tears slipping down my cheeks. "You just saved our lives, Isla." That day, I called the attorney again and sent him everything, every screenshot, every document, every shady detail I could dig up. He called me back within the hour and said one word: fraud. With Isla's evidence, I had enough to file for an emergency injunction and freeze the house sale. I'd also have grounds for civil damages, possibly even criminal charges for the forged signature, depending on how far Derek had gone. But I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about survival, about safety, about not having to pack up our lives and sleep in someone's guest room while he started a new one with someone else. Later that night, Derek came home and tried to pretend again. He walked in with takeout, Thai food, my favorite, like we were just another couple having a bad week. I didn't even look at him. I told him to sleep in the basement. He tried to act confused. I showed him my phone. Showed him Isla's screenshots. The color drained from his face. "You let her spy on me? You made her feel like she had to." He didn't say a word. Just stood there, holding that stupid bag of takeout. "I spoke to a lawyer," I said. "The house sale is frozen. You forged my signature, Derek. That's a felony." I hope she was worth it. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, then closed it again. He set the food on the counter and walked out the door. I haven't seen him sleep in this house since. But I'll never forget the moment when my 12-year-old daughter, too young to carry the weight of betrayal, too smart to stay silent, looked at me and said, "We're not going to let him win, Mom." And for the first time in weeks, I actually believed it. I used to think courtrooms were only for other people, for TV dramas and bad divorce movies. I never thought I'd be sitting in one, hands clasped, heart pounding, while a judge read aloud the words that would determine whether I lost everything or finally got it back. But there I was, wearing my best blouse like armor, Isla waiting with my sister in the hallway because I didn't want her to hear the mess her father had created firsthand. Derek didn't look at me once. He sat at the defendant's table, jaw clenched, suit wrinkled like he'd slept in his car. Meredith wasn't with him. She'd disappeared the moment the fraud allegations started rolling in. I wasn't surprised. From the emails, I'd gathered she was more opportunist than partner. The kind who clings during the high, but vanishes the second things spiral. The judge's voice was calm, but her words were a thunderclap. The deed transfer is hereby nullified due to fraudulent misrepresentation and forged documentation. The property remains in the name of Camille Norton, sole occupant, until legal ownership can be properly re-established. I exhaled for the first time in days. Then came the part that mattered even more. Given the evidence provided, including forged signatures and undisclosed financial diversion, Mr. Norton is liable for civil restitution and will be referred for further investigation regarding criminal charges. Derek didn't flinch. He just stared ahead, jaw twitching. Maybe he thought he could charm his way out of this like he always had, talk his way back into some second chance. But this time, there were consequences he couldn't sweet-talk away. When it was over, I walked out of that courthouse taller than I'd ever felt in my life. The world felt clearer. The weight wasn't gone, not entirely, but it had shifted. I wasn't carrying shame or confusion anymore. I was carrying power. Derek moved in with a friend across town. I didn't ask who. He sent a few pathetic texts, half apologies, half self-pity, but I didn't reply. My lawyer advised against it, but honestly, I didn't have the energy to engage. The man who once told me I was his world had tried to bury me financially and emotionally. He didn't deserve a response. Isla didn't ask for details. She just said, "So we're keeping the house?" I smiled. "We're keeping everything." We painted over the chalkboard wall in the kitchen. I let Isla pick the color. She chose ocean blue, her new favorite. We donated all of Derek's books, all his camping gear. The ugly lamp he insisted was vintage. It felt good to let it all go. Isla began sleeping better, laughing more. She started calling the living room our place instead of Dad's room. She began taking piano lessons again, real ones this time, with a teacher who shows up. She told me one night that she liked how quiet the house felt now. I knew what she meant. I wasn't bitter. I thought I would be. I expected to stew in it, to wake up angry every day, replaying every lie, every fake smile. But instead, I felt grateful, not for the betrayal, but for the clarity it forced, for the version of myself that rose from the ashes, sharper, smarter, less willing to shrink. And most of all, grateful for Isla. She saw what I refused to. She stood up when she didn't have to. I've always thought of myself as the protector, but in those terrifying few days, she protected me. And that's something I'll never forget. It's been 10 months now. The house is still ours, legally, financially, emotionally. I switched jobs to something more flexible, so I could be there when Isla gets home from school. I planted flowers in the front yard last weekend, the kind that attract hummingbirds. I read that they symbolize resilience, and I smiled because that feels fitting. The other day, Isla and I were making pancakes, burning them really, and she asked me if I was going to fall in love again. I paused. I don't know, baby. Maybe. But not until someone makes me feel safer than I already do. She grinned and said, "That'll be hard. We're pretty unbeatable."
She's right.
We are. I thought love was about history.
About vows.
About shared mortgages and matching towels and promising to stay even when it hurts. But now I know, love is about protection. About who shows up when everything's falling apart. About who tells you the truth when it's easier to lie. About who keeps you safe, not from the world, but from the people who say they love you and then try to burn you down. Derek tried to erase me. Isla made sure he failed.
And, in the end,
we stayed home.